The cell was small, dark, and cold, built of heavy stone walls that smelled of damp earth and rusted iron, a place where hope itself seemed to rot away. In the middle of this prison, on the floor, sat the widow. Her body was thin, her arms tied with rough rope and her head covered with a dirty sack that scratched against her skin. She did not move much, only her slow breathing proved that life still clung to her weak frame. Outside the iron bars, 2 alien guards stood watch. Their armor reflected the dim light of the hallway torches, and their eyes burned with the cold fire of authority. One of them leaned closer to the other and whispered, "Don't listen to her. She's crazy." The other guard gave a short laugh. "I know, they all say the same thing. She's mad. She is dangerous not because of what she does, but because of what she says." From beneath the sack, the widow's voice floated out, weak but sharp like a knife in the dark. "Humans are coming. They will change everything. You can beat me, you can starve me, but you cannot stop them." The guards looked at each other. For a moment, even in their hardened faces, a shadow of fear passed. They quickly shook it off, telling themselves she was nothing, just a broken woman. But deep down, the words scratched at their minds like claws. The widow had once been someone important, though the younger generation no longer remembered her. Long ago, she was married to a fighter, a man who stood against the rulers, a man who believed in unity between humans and her people. But he was executed. His memory was erased. Only the widow still carried his truth, and for that she was punished. Her cell was not only a prison of stone, it was a prison of silence. Every time she tried to speak, they told others not to listen. Every time she warned them, they called her insane. Yet still, she whispered in the dark, because she believed one thing with all her heart: humans would return. The sack over her head was more than just cloth. It was a symbol of shame, meant to cover her, to deny her face, to make her words sound muffled and empty. But to her, the sack was nothing. It could not silence her spirit. She would sit in darkness for days without food, without water. But when the guards came close, she would speak again. "Do you hear them? Do you feel the stars tremble? The humans are near." Sometimes the guards laughed. Sometimes they spat at her. Sometimes they grew angry and struck her with the butt of their weapons. But she did not stop. Each word she spoke was like a spark in a dry forest, small but dangerous. One young guard, newer than the rest, could not hide his curiosity. One night, while the others slept, he asked softly through the bars, "Why do you believe in them? Why do you believe humans will come?" Her voice was calm, steady, even as her lips cracked from thirst. "Because I saw them. Long ago I saw what they did. They fought for those who were weak. They stood against the rulers when no one else dared. They are different. They are not perfect, but they are not afraid of truth." The young guard said nothing more, but his heart was shaken. He had been told all his life that humans were liars, monsters, a threat to their people. Yet this broken widow, half-starved and beaten, spoke with faith as if she had touched something holy. Days passed in this way. The widow grew weaker, her body shrinking, but her voice never lost its fire. Every word she spoke carried weight. Every whisper echoed in the silence of the prison. And though the guards mocked her, though the judges had already declared her a traitor, though the people outside laughed at her name, her warning spread in quiet corners. Some said, "She is mad." Some said, "She is cursed." But a few whispered, "What if she is right?" That was the danger. Not her body, not her life, but her truth. The leaders feared the truth more than any weapon, and so the sack stayed on her head tighter than before. Her hands remained bound, and her stomach remained empty. But still she spoke, her voice a trembling fire in the cold dark. "You cannot stop them. The humans will come, and when they do, no chains, no walls, no lies will save you." Far above the prison, in the endless night sky, the stars flickered with secret light. Somewhere out there in the black void, engines roared. A ship moved. Metal wings cut through the silence of space. The widow smiled beneath the sack, though no one could see it. She knew what the others could not. She felt what the guards could not admit. The humans were coming. The sky above the alien world had always been quiet, a black dome filled with stars that never moved. But tonight, the silence broke. A deep rumble rolled across the heavens, not thunder, not storm, but something heavier, something alive with power. The people looked up from the streets, their faces pale under the silver moons. A streak of fire burned across the sky, a star falling closer, closer, until they realized it was no star at all. It was a ship. The vessel cut through the clouds like a blade, sharp edges glowing red from the heat of entry. It was not built like their ships, not curved and smooth, but angular, strong, built with purpose. The people stared, fear crawling in their throats because they knew exactly what it was. Humans. The rulers had said humans were long gone, defeated, erased from history. They had said humans were weak, clumsy, unworthy of the stars. Yet here was proof burning bright in the night sky, undeniable, unstoppable. In the prison cell, the widow lifted her head. She could not see through the sack, but she did not need to. She felt the tremor in the ground, the shift in the air. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "They are here," she whispered. The guards outside her cell shifted nervously. One spat on the floor, trying to cover his unease. "It's nothing. Just a patrol ship." But his hands trembled on his weapon and his eyes flickered toward the barred window, as if he too knew the truth. The human ship landed beyond the city walls, dust and fire rising in its wake. A ramp extended and armored figures walked down, each step heavy, deliberate. Their helmets reflected the pale moons. Their weapons hung silent at their sides. But their presence alone carried weight. At the front was Captain Elias Ward, his face uncovered, human eyes sharp and steady. He scanned the alien crowd that had gathered outside the gates, his voice strong though calm. "We come in peace. We come seeking truth," the crowd gasped. His words carried through translators, every ear hearing the message in their own tongue. Some stepped back in fear, others in awe. Children pointed. Elders whispered old stories they were forbidden to speak. Inside the council hall, the alien leaders argued in panic. "They must be turned away," one shouted. "They must not be allowed to speak," another hissed. "They will uncover everything we buried," but it was too late. The humans were already here. In the marketplace, whispers spread faster than fire. "The widow was right," someone muttered. "She said they would return." Others shushed him, afraid of punishment, but the thought had already taken root. Doubt is a dangerous seed, and now it was growing. Captain Ward and his soldiers walked through the streets, unafraid of the stairs, unafraid of the shadows. They saw the way people avoided their eyes, the way guards tightened their grips on their weapons. The city looked calm on the surface, but underneath it pulsed with tension. One soldier, Lieutenant Kara, leaned closer to her captain. "They're hiding something," she said softly. "You can feel it." "The way they watch us," Ward nodded. "Keep alert. We didn't come all this way for ceremony." As night fell, the humans requested an audience with the rulers. The council agreed, but with tight smiles and false words. They welcomed the visitors with feast and music, yet every laugh was hollow, every toast empty. At the far edge of the hall, in chains, the widow was dragged forward. Her sack remained on her head, her body weak yet her spirit unbroken. She did not speak, not yet, but her presence alone was enough. Captain Ward's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, staring at the prisoner. "Why is she bound?" he asked. The council leader forced a smile. "She is no one. A madwoman. Do not listen to her." The widow lifted her head under the sack. She could not see them, but she felt them. Her voice broke the hall's silence. "Humans, you have come." The council erupted in shouts. Guards moved to silence her, but the humans raised their weapons, not to fire, but to warn. The air turned heavy, every breath sharp with tension. Ward's voice cut through the noise, calm but firm. "We want answers. Who is she? What crime has she committed?" The leader's smile faltered. "She spreads lies. Dangerous lies about your kind. We cannot allow it." But already the whispers had begun. Servants leaned to each other, murmuring, "She was right. She said they would return." Soldiers at the edges shifted uncomfortably, doubt flickering in their eyes. The widow spoke again, her voice trembling but full of fire. "They call me mad. They call me cursed. But I am the only one who remembers the truth. Humans stood with us once. Humans bled for us once, and now they have come again." The room shook with noise, shouts, denials, gasps. The council tried to silence her, but the words had already been spoken. Captain Ward looked at her with steady eyes. He saw not a broken prisoner, but a survivor. He did not know her story yet, but he knew one thing. She was no liar. And deep within his chest, a spark of anger grew. For if this widow spoke truth, then the humans had been betrayed long ago. The council chamber had never felt so heavy. The air seemed to press down on everyone, thick with fear and tension. The widow's words hung there like smoke that refused to vanish. She stood in chains, the sack still covering her head, yet her voice carried stronger than the music, stronger than the lies. Humans stood with us once. Humans bled for us once, and now they have come again. The alien rulers shouted for silence, their voices cracking with panic. Guards rushed forward to drag the widow out, but Captain Ward raised a hand. His soldiers moved into position, armored figures standing like stone pillars. The crowd gasped as the humans refused to step aside. "No one leaves," Ward said, his tone sharp and commanding. "Not until we hear her story." The council leader's smile was gone now, replaced by fury. "She is nothing. She is a widow of a traitor, a madwoman who speaks poison. You will not listen to her." But Ward did not move. His eyes locked on the prisoner. "Take the sack off." For a moment no one dared obey. The hall froze. Then slowly one of the younger guards reached forward with trembling hands. He untied the rough rope and pulled the sack away. The widow's face appeared, pale and bruised, her eyes sunken but still burning with defiance. The crowd gasped at the sight of her, not because of her weakness, but because even in ruin her gaze carried fire. Captain Ward looked at her with steady eyes. "Tell us," he said. "Tell us everything." The widow's lips trembled, not from fear but from the weight of memory. Her voice came soft at first, but each word grew stronger. "Long ago, before the rulers hid the truth, there was a war. Our people were broken, our cities burning. The rulers called it hopeless. They told us we were finished, but then the humans came." The crowd stirred uneasily. The council shouted over her, "Lies! She speaks lies!" But no one silenced her now. They came not for conquest, not for gold, not for slaves. They came because they could not watch the weak fall. They came with fire in their hearts, and though they were fewer, though their ships were smaller, they fought beside us. Her voice shook, and for a moment, her eyes grew wet. I remember my husband standing with them. He was a soldier, brave and foolish. He trusted the humans, trusted their honor. Together they defended a valley where thousands of our people hid. For 3 days and nights they fought. For 3 days and nights the humans never left our side. The hall fell silent. Even the guards seemed frozen, listening despite themselves. "What happened?" asked Lieutenant Kara, her human voice breaking the stillness. The widow closed her eyes. "They won us time. But in the end, my husband fell. The humans carried his body so I could bury him. They swore to him with their last breath that our people would live. And we did, we lived. But the rulers, they feared what came after." Her voice grew sharper now, filled with rage. The rulers could not stand it. That humans had saved us, that humans had shown us courage when they showed us nothing but control. So they erased it. They erased the battles, erased the names, erased the memory of humans from our books. And anyone who spoke the truth, they silenced. She lifted her chained hands as far as they would go. "That is why I am here. That is why they call me mad. Not because I lie, but because I remember." The crowd was no longer still. Murmurs spread like fire in dry grass. Some shook their heads in disbelief, but others leaned closer, whispering, "What if it's true? What if the humans saved us?" The council leader slammed his fist on the table. "Enough," he roared. "Do not listen to her. She is a widow of a traitor. She would see us bow to outsiders." But Captain Ward's face was carved in stone. "I've heard enough." The widow turned her eyes toward him. "Captain, you came because you knew. You felt it, didn't you? That something here was hidden. That your story, your blood, was tied to ours." Ward did not answer, but the silence itself was enough. He could see it now, the fear in the council's eyes, the cracks in their perfect walls of lies. The widow lowered her head, her voice softer but unbroken. "I have lived in chains, starved in the dark, beaten and mocked, all for this truth. But I do not care what they do to me. What matters is that you are here. You came back, and that means their lies cannot stand forever." For the first time, the alien crowd did not laugh at her. They did not call her crazy. They only stared at the rulers, questions burning in their minds, questions they had been forbidden to ask. The council shouted for the guards to take her away, but the guards hesitated. Their hands shook. Their eyes flickered between the leaders and the humans, and in that moment, the seed of rebellion was planted. The widow had spoken the forbidden story, and no force, no chain, no lie could take it back. High above the city, the human ship rested silent, its engines dim but ready. Like a shadow waiting to rise, like a storm waiting to break, the truth was no longer buried, and the rulers knew it. The trial was not held in secret. It was not hidden in dark chambers or whispered in corners. The rulers wanted the whole city to see it, to laugh at it, to believe the lie. And so they dragged the widow into the great court hall, chains rattling against the stone floor, her steps slow but steady. Above her, the ceiling arched high, carved with symbols of power. Around her, rows of citizens filled the seats, their faces pale with fear, their eyes eager for distraction. The rulers promised them a show, and a show they would get. The widow's head still carried bruises from the sack. Her body was weak, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. She did not bow, she did not beg. She stood straight, though her chains dug into her wrists. The chief judge, dressed in long robes of crimson, raised his hand for silence. His voice boomed across the chamber. People of the council city, today we try a woman who has poisoned your ears with madness. She claims humans are our saviors. She calls traitors heroes. She spreads lies that weaken us. The crowd roared with laughter. Some shouted insults. Others spat on the floor. The widow stood in the middle, calm as stone. Captain Ward and his soldiers stood at the back of the hall. They had been allowed to witness, but not to speak. Ward's jaw tightened as he watched. This was no trial. This was theater. A cruel performance meant to erase truth. The judge pointed at the widow. Speak, madwoman. Tell us your lies once more so the people may see your sickness. The widow lifted her head. Her voice came clear, unshaken. I speak no lies. Humans fought beside us once. Humans saved us when you could not, and now they have come again. The hall exploded in noise. Some laughed, others shouted for her death. The ruler smiled, pleased at the reaction. The judge leaned forward, mocking. And how, widow, do you explain their absence for all these years? If they cared, why did they not return sooner? Where were your precious humans when your husband fell? The words struck like knives, but the widow did not break. Her eyes burned brighter. They were scattered. They were hunted. But they did not forget. No true friend forgets. The crowd laughed harder now, voices rising in cruel joy. She's insane, someone shouted. Humans are ghosts, cried another. The widow let them laugh. She did not fight their noise. She only waited until the chamber grew quieter again. Then she whispered, just loud enough to carry. Your laughter betrays your fear. If my words were false, you would not fear them so much. The judge slammed his staff against the floor. Silence. His face flushed red. You will not twist your madness into wisdom. But her words had already spread like cracks in glass. Some in the crowd shifted uneasily. A few lowered their eyes, ashamed of their laughter. Ward's fists clenched at his side. Lieutenant Kara leaned close and muttered, This is no trial. It's a stage to bury her alive. I know, Ward replied, his voice low. But let them keep digging their own grave. The judge straightened. This woman is guilty of treason. She is guilty of spreading disease of the mind. And for this she will face the punishment of silence. The crowd cheered. Silence! Silence! They shouted, pounding their fists against the seats. Guards dragged the widow forward, forcing her to her knees. One pulled out a fresh sack, rougher than the last, dark cloth that smelled of rot. He held it high for all to see, and the crowd cheered louder. The widow lifted her face to the sky-lit ceiling. She did not cry. She did not beg. She only said, chains cannot bury truth. Sacks cannot cover stars. The humans will come, and when they do, you will remember these words. The guard shoved the sack over her head. The crowd burst into laughter again, cruel and wild as if they had won. But at the back of the hall, the humans did not laugh. Their faces were carved from stone. Captain Ward's eyes burned with cold fire. He had seen enough. As the cheers echoed, the widow whispered beneath the sack, words no one but the guards closest could hear. You laugh now, but when the stars burn, when the ships descend, you will choke on your own silence. One guard froze at her words, his hand trembling. He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time doubt cracked his armor. The trial ended in mockery. The rulers declared victory. The crowd was sent away with laughter on their lips, but laughter cannot kill truth. It only hides fear. And fear had already begun to spread. That night, in the silence of his quarters, Captain Ward stood at the window staring at the alien sky. His soldiers waited behind him, tense and restless. Finally, Ward spoke, his voice low but steady. We cannot leave her here. She is more than a prisoner. She is the key. And in the darkness, the humans began to plan. The cell was colder now. The torches outside had burned low, leaving the walls in shadows. The widow sat on the floor, her head once again covered by the rough sack, the cloth pressing against her skin, damp with sweat and dirt. Her wrists were tied tighter than before, the rope cutting into her skin until small drops of blood ran down her arms. She had not eaten in days. The guards brought no food, only a cup of stale water every now and then, tossed on the ground as if she were an animal. The floor was hard, the air heavy with mold. The sack trapped her breath, making every inhale a struggle. This was her punishment. Not execution, not a clean end. No, her punishment was silence. To starve slowly in the dark. To have her voice muffled forever beneath cloth. To vanish without leaving sound. Yet still, even in weakness, she found strength. Her body shook, her lips cracked, but she whispered through the sack again and again, "Humans will come. Humans will not forget." The guards grew restless. At first they laughed at her. Then they shouted back, mocking her words. But now, after endless nights, the laughter had faded. Some no longer looked at her directly. Some shifted uncomfortably when she spoke. One guard, the youngest, stood alone by her cell door. His name was Arik. His hands tightened on his spear, his face pale as he listened to her muffled voice. He whispered under his breath, "Why don't you stop? Why don't you give up?" From behind the sack, her voice answered, weak but steady. "Because the truth does not die when a body suffers." "The truth waits," Arik swallowed hard. He had been told she was dangerous, that she was insane. But her voice was not madness. It was something else, something unshakable. He felt it pressing against his own chest like a weight he could not throw off. That night, when the other guards slept, Arik crept closer to her cell. He placed a small piece of bread through the bars. "Eat," he whispered. The widow did not touch it. "Why?" she asked softly. Arik hesitated. His voice cracked. "Because I don't know if you are wrong," she smiled beneath the sack. "That is enough. Doubt is the beginning of truth." The next morning, the council ordered the guards to tighten her chains and give her no water for 2 days. They wanted her to break, to beg, to collapse into silence, but she did not beg. She did not cry. She only whispered slower now, her words broken but clear. "Humans will come. They will see what you fear." The guards began to avoid her cell. They could not stand the sound of her voice anymore. It crawled under their skin, it kept them awake at night, it filled their dreams. Meanwhile, the humans were not idle. Captain Ward walked the streets, speaking to the people, watching their faces, listening to their whispers. He saw how some avoided his eyes, but others lingered, desperate to ask questions they dared not speak aloud. One old woman bowed to him in secret, her voice trembling. "She is right. The widow is right. I was there when humans fought for us. I was a child, but I remember. They told us to forget, but I cannot." Ward's jaw tightened. The truth was no longer buried. It was leaking out, one voice at a time. Back in the council hall, the rulers grew more desperate. "She must be silenced forever," one snarled. "If she keeps speaking, the people will believe her. But if we kill her," another whispered, "the humans will see us as tyrants." The leader slammed his fist. "Then starve her until she cannot speak. Let her words rot in her throat." And so the torture deepened. No food, almost no water. The sack never removed, but the widow did not stop. "Even with lips too dry to move, even with breath too weak to carry," she whispered. Sometimes only the closest guard could hear. Sometimes only Arik leaned close enough to catch the words. Truth does not fear hunger. Truth does not fear darkness. Her strength was not in her body anymore, it was in her defiance. Arik felt his chest tighten every time she spoke. He began to question the oaths he had sworn, the rulers he served. He wondered if chains on a widow could truly hold back what was coming. And far above, the human ship remained silent in orbit. Its engines cold, its guns quiet, but its presence heavy in the sky. Everyone knew it was there, waiting. Captain Ward stood on the ramp at night, looking down at the alien city lights. He thought of the widow suffering in her cell, mocked and starved. He thought of her words. "She is the key," he told Kara. "If they fear her voice this much, then she carries something they cannot bury. And if they break her, they break the truth with her. We cannot allow that." Kara's eyes hardened. "Then we take her. No more waiting." Ward did not answer yet. His mind was torn between duty and fury. But deep down he knew Kara was right. In the cell, the widow whispered once more. her voice faint but unbroken. The stars move. The humans are near. Her body sagged, but her spirit burned brighter. And somewhere in the shadows, Arik, the young guard, whispered back for the first time, "I believe you." The silence of torture was breaking. The cracks were spreading, and soon the ruler's lies would fall. The council chamber was not ready for storm. It was built for control, for ceremony, for power displayed in silence and order. But when the humans returned the next morning, silence was broken. They did not enter as guests. They entered as accusers. Captain Ward walked at the front, his boots echoing against the polished stone floor. His soldiers followed close behind, their armor shining beneath the high light of the ceiling. Every step was deliberate. Every breath carried weight. The alien leaders rose from their seats, anger flashing in their eyes. "You were given permission to observe, not to interfere," one hissed. Ward's voice was calm, but steel cut through his words. "We will not watch lies dressed as justice. We want answers. We want truth." The council leader leaned forward, his robes heavy with jewels. "Truth, you know nothing of this world. You come as strangers, uninvited. You demand what you do not understand." Ward did not flinch. He pulled a small device from his belt and placed it on the floor. A hologram flickered to life. Images recorded by the human scouts during their search of the archives. The chamber gasped as forgotten images filled the air. Ancient battles. Alien soldiers fighting shoulder to shoulder with humans. Blood and fire in the valleys. Humans carrying the wounded to safety. The crowd that had gathered at the edges of the hall cried out in shock. "These records were hidden," Ward said firmly. "You erased them. You erased us." The council leader slammed his fist against the table. "Enough, these are forgeries, human tricks." But the widow's voice rose from the back of the hall, faint but sharp. Guards had dragged her there once again, sack over her head, chains on her wrists. She did not need to see the images, she knew them by memory. "They are no trick," she said. Her voice, though weak, carried across the room. "I saw it with my own eyes. My husband fought in those battles. He died in those battles. You erased him, but you cannot erase what happened." The crowd shifted, murmurs rising like a wave. For the first time, doubt spilled openly into the air. One elder in the audience stood, trembling. His voice cracked with age, but his words struck deep. "I was there too. I was a boy. I remember the humans. They gave us bread when we had none. They fought while we fled. I was told never to speak of it again, but I cannot deny what I saw." Gasps echoed. The rulers' faces tightened with fury, but the damage was done. The forbidden truth was no longer hidden in shadows. It was spilling into the open, spoken by more than one voice. Captain Ward stepped forward, his eyes locked on the council. "You feared us not because we were monsters, but because we stood beside your people when you would not. You feared that they would love us more than you. That is why you buried the truth." The council leader's mask of calm cracked. His voice rose, harsh and brittle. "Humans are dangerous. You meddle. You change what you touch. If we had not erased you, our people would bow to you now." His words rang out too loudly, too desperately. The crowd heard not strength but fear. The widow lifted her head beneath the sack. "You feared hope. That is your crime." The guards around her hesitated. Some lowered their weapons. One, Arik, stepped back from the bars completely, his face pale, his hands shaking. Ward's voice grew softer now, but no less sharp. "So this is the truth. You silenced your own people. You starved a widow. You erased history. Not because humans were a threat, but because we reminded you of courage." The chamber fell into chaos. Some in the crowd shouted in anger at the rulers. Others argued in disbelief. Guards looked to each other, unsure of who to obey. The rulers shouted for order, but their voices no longer carried the same weight. The widow's chains rattled as she took a weak step forward. Her body trembled, but her spirit burned. "You can call me mad. You can cover my face, but you cannot cover the stars. You cannot cover the truth. It is here now, standing in this hall, wearing human faces once again." Her words spread like fire. People who had once laughed at her now stared with wide eyes, their laughter gone. Ward's soldiers tightened their stance, hands near their weapons. The rulers, red with fury, called for her execution, but when the order came, half the guards did not move. Some froze. Some lowered their weapons completely. Arik was the first to step back, shaking his head. "I will not kill her," he whispered. and his words cracked the wall of obedience. The rulers saw it, their grip slipping. The humans saw it too, the balance shifting. The revelation was no longer hidden. The lie was broken. Captain Ward turned to his soldiers, his voice steady. The truth is out. Now we decide what comes next. Above the hall, through the high windows, the sky seemed to tremble. The human ship in orbit sent a low hum across the air, a promise of strength waiting to descend. And the widow, still in chains, smiled beneath the sack. Her husband's memory was no longer erased. Her words were no longer alone. The truth was free, and nothing could bury it again. The great chamber shook with noise. Voices clashed, guards argued, and the rulers shouted for control, but the tide had already turned. The forbidden truth was loose, and no chain could hold it anymore. The widow stood in the center, her body weak, her head still covered by the sack. Yet her presence filled the hall like fire. She had been mocked, beaten, starved, but her words had survived, and now the humans stood beside her. Captain Ward raised his voice above the chaos, calm, firm, unshakable. This ends now. No more lies, no more silence. She is not a traitor. She is a witness. She speaks the truth. The rulers bared their teeth, their faces twisted in rage. You will not take her. You will not infect our people with your poison. Ward's hand lifted. His soldiers moved forward, armored boots striking the stone floor in unison. The chamber fell into tense silence as human rifles leveled toward the council dais. And then, in a single motion, Ward stepped to the widow's side. He reached out and tore the sack from her head. Gasps filled the air. Her bruised face was revealed at last, eyes hollow from hunger but still burning like coals. She blinked against the light, then raised her chin proudly. I told you, she whispered, her voice trembling but strong. The humans would come. The crowd erupted, not with laughter this time, but with shouts, cheers, questions, anger at their rulers. The council leader slammed his fist. Guards, kill them all. But the order did not carry weight anymore. Some guards stepped forward in obedience, but many froze, and then Arik, the young guard, dropped his weapon to the floor. His voice rang out. I will not obey. She speaks the truth. Others followed. One by one, soldiers lowered their weapons, torn between fear and conscience. The rulers shouted, but their power cracked like glass under stone. Captain Ward looked at the widow. You're free now. His knife sliced through her chains, and the iron fell to the ground with a heavy clang. For the first time in years, her wrists were unbound. She staggered forward, weak, but the humans caught her gently. She lifted her face toward the crowd. Look at me, she cried, her voice raw. They called me mad. They said I was cursed, but I was only guilty of remembering. Humans bled for us once. Humans died for us once. And they have returned, not with chains, not with hatred, but with truth. The hall shook with cries. The people no longer laughed. They no longer mocked. They began to shout at the rulers, demanding answers, demanding justice. The rulers, pale with fear, clung to their seats. You do not understand. One screamed. Humans change everything they touch. If you follow them, you will forget who you are. The widow turned, her eyes blazing. We did not forget who we were. You made us forget who they were. That is the only crime here. Ward stepped closer to the dais, his voice low but deadly. We came not as conquerors. We came because we never forgot. We came because promises matter, and humans never forget their friends. His words echoed like thunder. The rulers fell silent. For the first time they looked small, stripped of their power. Outside, the hum of engines grew louder. The human ship descended slowly, casting a long shadow over the city. Its lights burned bright against the sky, a reminder that this was not a dream, not a story. It was real. The widow lifted her arms, chains gone, her face turned toward the ship. Tears traced down her cheeks, not of sorrow but of release. My husband, she whispered softly. I kept the promise. They came back. The crowd roared, the sound spilling out of the chamber into the streets. Some cheered for the widow, some for the humans, and some simply for the truth at last uncovered. The rulers tried one last cry for order, but no one listened. Their voices were drowned under the roar of their own people. Ward turned to his soldiers. Stand ready. This is only the beginning. They may beg for war. They may beg for peace. But either way, the truth is no longer theirs to bury. The widow placed her hand gently on his arm. No matter what comes, you gave me back my voice. That is enough. Ward met her gaze, and for the first time since landing he allowed himself a small, grim smile. No, it's only the start. Because now they know what it means to stand with us. The chamber doors burst open and the crowd poured into the streets, shouting the widow's name, shouting the human's name. The lie was dead. The truth walked alive among them. And in the dark corners of the city, those still loyal to the rulers whispered of rebellion, of vengeance, of fire yet to come. But for that moment, for the first time in many years, the widow stood free beneath the open sky. The humans had kept their promise, and the universe would never forget it.